So, before I get started, I'm going to say, have you ever noticed in the Roger Moore movies, especially in the last two, there's a repeated use of the same sound effect? Every time something happens to him, it makes this like, oh noise. Here we go. Definitely something going on in the editing room there, a bit of copy and paste. Anyway, mystery solved. Let's get on with the show. Hello and welcome to Brand X Reviews and happy Global James Bond Day. So this isn't something that I necessarily cover every year strictly, but usually if there's something to talk about, I will. It's kind of difficult because in recent years, especially since the last Bond film came out, which was nearly 4 years ago in 2021, we haven't really had anything. And to be honest, we've pretty much had confirmation that we're not going to have anything like what we had before. I'm going to get into that. Now, what I'm not going to do is be absolutely negative. There's quite a lot of negativity to talk about, and some of that I will be talking about, but I'm going to overshadow it with positivity. So stay with me on this. This is something I've done in previous years. Basically, the gist of it is, spoiler alert, what I'm saying is there's plenty of reason, not just to be concerned, but to be pretty much certain that anything that comes forward is not going to be James Bond as we know it. Not only is it going to be uncharted territory or some kind of like undiscovered country, it's going to be pretty bad as well. And it's going to be, in a lot of ways, anathema to what we understand James Bond to be. You don't have to be anti-woke to understand that. I think the default position for a lot of people is anti-woke. And I'm not going to necessarily go there too much in this video, but there is an element of that, and there's kind of, especially when we saw the last film and everything that they tried to put into that film, some of it they actually did put into that film. It's not necessarily about that. So, one recent thing that's been talked about openly in the last week is the Amazon situation with the back catalogue of movies. So the streaming service Amazon, obviously they own everything James Bond, not just production but distribution. They're calling the shots now. It's no longer an Eon production, anything that comes going forward in the usual sense. So the back catalogue has had a recent re-release onto Amazon Prime, and the artwork that they've re-released, the movies where they've airbrushed out or cropped out the guns out of the posters they've taken. These aren't completely new images that they've come out with. They've come out with old existing artwork. Much of it is iconic and very much recognisable. And they've just taken the guns out. In fact, let me just show you what I mean. So here we can see the poster artwork that Amazon has put out, and some of them look less egregious than others. I think what they've done is they've just basically taken certain older promo photos. Well, obviously they're older, these are old films, but they've taken ones that are quite well established. And what's really jarring about them is the fact that they have taken something away from something that was quite iconic. The Dr. No poster that was using a lot of the video covers, especially in recent times, where he's holding the gun and the gun has been taken away, is noticeable. Some of the other ones, they've just kind of cropped the guns out, and the View to a Kill one is just weird. They've like stretched Roger Moore's arms really long. Kind of reminds me of the end of RoboCop where Dick Jones falls out the window and his arms are really long. It looks really stupid. So yeah, it's just really noticeable, and obviously the 007 logo itself has a gun incorporated into it, and we have seen recent iterations of that where the gun has been taken out. So make of it what you will. And of course, don't worry, you can still appreciate what came before, you can still be a fan, there's still plenty of things to collect, either future releases or upcoming releases. You can still appreciate the fact that guns were a part of the history of James Bond. I mean, on my display there's plenty of things like that. A couple of shelves up, I even have some air guns. I have the Walther P99 and the Walther PPK replicas. Of course, it's the Walther CP99 if it's the air gun, obviously, but yeah, there's plenty of things like that, and if you're a fan of the guns in particular of James Bond, there's plenty to enjoy. So I kind of throw that in there. Like I say, don't be disheartened by any actions taken by Amazon, either in the past, now, or in the future, because we've ultimately got decades of something that we love. I mean, when it comes to the Godfather trilogy, we haven't had a Godfather movie in 35 years. Does it matter? Does that mean that you can't be a fan of the Godfather trilogy? Does it need to keep going? Do we need to have a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and a 7 and keep going? I think we need to not, to be honest. So I think sometimes calling it a day at some point is definitely necessary. It was the same with certain TV shows. Remember The Office? Ricky Gervais, he had this thing about only making two. I know he later on went on and broke that rule, but he had a thing about just making 2 series of things. Did it with The Office, did it with Extras, and it was a really good thing to do. Based it on John Cleese' Fawlty Towers, from apparently that was the case. Thank you, Paul Cage, for that bit of information. But that's a good example of quitting something at the right point, and they're not going to do that with James Bond. They're going to continue making movies and everything else, but the point is, it doesn't matter if they only made 2 series of those shows or if they kept on going and we like those or didn't like those. You've still got 2 great series to enjoy. So appreciate what you've got, basically. Don't be too negative about this, even though we are, like I say, focusing on some of the negative things here. Now, I might have said this in the past when it comes to just generally whether or not it's good or bad, but the nature of the new films, Bond 26. I even have a playlist. I might as well delete it, to be fair, on this channel called Bond 26. And this is a playlist of videos that I've made where for years I've been talking about basically what's going to come after the Daniel Craig era. I mean, at one point we even thought that Bond 25 was going to be the post-Daniel Craig era, but obviously came back and did No Time to Die. But to me, it's kind of pointless now. There is no Bond 26. It doesn't matter whether it's good or not. It's probably not going to be good, but point is, this is an Eon Productions movie. It's an Amazon movie. They bought the rights to it. This is where it gets a bit confusing because, you know, the films Never Say Never Again. That was a Sean Connery James Bond film that came out in '83. And some people call it an unofficial Bond film. That's not actually true. It is an official Bond film. They had the rights to do it. It was official. It just wasn't made by the studio that made the Bond films that we know, Eon Productions. So it wasn't a part of that, but it was official, as was the 1967 Casino Royale, that spoof. That was an official James Bond film because they had the license to do it. So this film is going to be official in the same sense that not Die Another Day, what the hell? Never Say Never Again and Casino Royale were official. But it's not part of it doesn't matter who they bring into, it doesn't matter if they bring old cast back. I mean, Never Say Never Again brought Sean Connery back, and we still understand that wasn't part of the series. It doesn't belong in that collection. If you're watching all the Bond films, you don't watch that film in there because it doesn't fit in there. Same with Casino Royale 1967. So whatever they do coming forward, you can kind of fool yourself into thinking that's Bond 26, but really it's not. The movies were the ones that ended with No Time to Die. And I think that the filmmakers really kind of recognised that. I think that they knew that they were lucky to even bring the film back for that. Hence, they killed him off at the end of that movie. Which kind of sucks. But like I say, we've got 25 great films. Enjoy that. Celebrate that. Keep going back and rewatching them. It's fantastic. Being a fan of the James Bond franchise for all these years. And understanding that that's something that they can't take away from us as long as we've got physical media, because this is another concern. The the amendments that they've made to these posters pretty much highlight a disregard for what's come before. I know that Barbara Broccoli wasn't happy with some of the Amazon, I don't know if they were executives, but the people that she was in talks with, when they were referring to James Bond movies as content because of the really cold, callous, artificial way that these studios look to these things. I'm not saying that wasn't always the case. I mean, Harry Saltzman, for example, he was very questionable sometimes in the early days when those first Bond films were getting made. But I guess they just had something really good on their side. Who knows? I mean, one thing I would like to see if they are going to do, if I'm going to have any interest in the James Bond stuff that comes going forward, the movies that comes going forwards from Amazon, it would be if they did something along the line, and it'd have to be cinema release, something along the lines of not remaking the films, but doing from scratch the books. I don't think this would work, to be honest, but doing them chronologically, setting them when the books were set. It would be very difficult. I mean, for starters, the first book is Casino Royale, and I know that film is still quite recent in people's memory compared to the older films. I know it's like nearly 20 years ago, but 20 years ago isn't as far as 60 years ago. So, and it's a very, very loved film, is that as well, the 2006 film. So it would be difficult to do, to open with that, basically. So I don't see them doing that. We've talked about this before on the channel, so I won't go too far down that rabbit hole. But I think that is something that I think could work from my point. That's just me saying that. I'm sure other people have got other ideas as well. But that's something that I would like to see. I wouldn't really want to see a streaming TV series. It would just, in contrast, like James Bond. I mean, these books. Initially, it is books. There's nothing that says it has to be a movie. But I think the movies have enough of a legacy to really kind of say that if you're watching a TV show with James Bond, an Amazon TV show, no matter how much money they spend on it, it's just not going to hold up to the movies. So it would just make you think, oh man, I wish I was watching the films. But who knows? They could surprise us. I've said things like this before and I've been wrong. So, and I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to play this film back and look at it and say, how cynical was I? I was wrong, and I'm really grateful that Amazon managed to pull something out, pull a miracle off here. So we'll see about that anyway. Like I said, I want to be positive. It's Global James Bond Day. I'm not one of these fandom menace types, despite the number of videos I've done talking about war Korean movies and so on. And particularly, like I say, I didn't want to go there too much with this. I know, like I say, there's no escaping it. Even if you say you don't want to talk about it, you still can't escape the fact that it is a factor in these things. And you're going to start seeing all sorts of weird decisions made, like what we saw with removing the guns from these posters. I know there's been a lot of mental gymnastics talking about it and saying like they just took the gun out of the posters that had them because some of the other posters just naturally and organically they weren't holding guns and they wanted to keep them all uniform, so that in all of them he's just kind of stood there and there's no background. He's just wearing smart clothes. That's about. There's no extra person by his side. There's no gadgets, there's not even a watch, it's just Bond, the man himself, and they want to keep it uniform, hence they got rid of the guns. I don't think that's the reason why. I think it's a neutering down of the character. I know it's a neutering down of the character because they've said that that's what they want to do. I know that there was, I can't remember exactly what the specifics were, but you can look this up. There was a meeting with some of the people at Amazon, and I think there was like one of the women in the room said something like, James Bond is not the hero. And it was like everyone went silent or something. It's like, that's the kind of thing we're dealing with here. There's a lot of identity politics and toxic stuff going on in there as well. So until we get rid of that, don't make any more Bond films. This is an era that has to blow over. It's suddenly, very, very rapidly, very quickly, because that guy is very rapidly getting tossed out of a lot of the institutions. And let's hope that pattern continues, because that's something that we really need. If James Bond is going to have a future where he is depicted as everything that we know and love out of that guy and that world. One other thing I don't want to see would be a spin-off. So I want to see a Moneypenny series, or I want to see a Q spin-off series, or even movies. Not interested. Some weird people might kind of want to go there, but I'm kind of being a bit what's the word now, aggressive against some of the other fan base. But it is a bit weird. Like, why would you want to do that? It's just a bit, it's a side character, and that's how it should stay. So yeah, who knows? In terms of anything else that's been coming out, what is there really? There was this situation a couple of years ago with the books, wasn't there? With the books getting altered on the 70th anniversary of the books. Started coming out in 53 from memory. Yeah, so 2023, that was when we saw the re-release, and they were getting bits cut out of them due to modern audiences and sensitivity readers thinking, oh, we can't have that in a book, so they cut that out. Who knows if they'll start playing about, fiddling about with the films. We've seen some tinkering with the movies in the past. I know 20 years ago when the movies got, they did a HD transfer of the movies. I think they first started with doing like upscaled DVDs, And then about a couple of years later, we got Blu-rays. And there were a few amendments made to little things just to take out some of the gaffes and mistakes and so on that were evident in some of the films, but they were very subtle, the change that they made. So let's just hope that they don't do any more tinkering, George Lucas style, with any of these films, because that's really something that doesn't go down well when they do that. It's just leave things in, unless it's something like with the Blade Runner Final Edition, where there were like really bad mistakes that made in that, with like audio and stunt doubles that you could clearly tell were a stunt double, and they went in and fixed that. That was good. I don't think anybody could argue with that. But when they're doing things, taking things out to new to the character or new to just the movies in general, I don't think anybody wants to watch a James Bond film to see that. I think it's more people that just want to. They don't want other people to watch that. So, well, you watch your thing, we'll watch ours. You know, that's where those people should stay. Anyway, what else is there to talk about? Like I say, it's difficult to talk about James Bond in terms of anything upcoming without being negative. So again, I just take it back to the fact that this is a franchise that has meant a lot to a lot of people for a long time. A lot of it goes back to childhood, myself included. I wasn't a big James Bond fan as a young child. It wasn't until I was kind of in my early teens, especially when the Pierce Brosnan films started to materialise and get going. I remember I was a fan by the time GoldenEye came out, so that was a really nice era growing up. And so there's, like I said, there's plenty of happy memories like that. I remember in the UK, the movies were something that always got repeated on TV, especially around bank holidays. I mean, there'd usually be something on around Christmas, but particularly James Bond was like a bank holiday Monday kind of film going back. I don't know, is that something, am I misremembering that? If anyone else is in the UK, do you sort of remember that in like the 80s and 90s? James Bond films, they just put random ones on. Sometimes they'd put two on. I seem to remember one year they put on Diamonds Are Forever, and then after that they put For Your Eyes Only. So those two films don't really sort of follow on necessarily. I suppose Blofeld is you last see him in Diamonds Are Forever, and then comes back in For Your Eyes Only. Was that the reason? Who knows? But there's always plenty of happy memories. So to be honest, in terms of future movies, we don't need anything going forward. We got plenty of good stuff to keep revisiting. So stick with that. It's Global James Bond Day. Let's be happy, let's celebrate it, and let's just stay fans no matter what happens. So right, I will leave it there and say coming up end of this month we've got our Halloween special with the Core. He's going to be taking part in a lot of these, so check back, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.
Right, so here is the trailer for the 13th annual Brand X Reviews Halloween special. I'm trying to use a bit of AI, so let's see if this plays okay.
It is coming. All Topher jokes aside. This October, the Brand X Reviews 13th annual Halloween special.
Right, no, that's a load of rubbish. Stop that right now. What the hell? Anal? We meant 13th annual Halloween special. We started this in 2013. We're doing it every year. We don't always do lots of videos. Some years we just do one video. We don't say what we're going to talk about until the videos drop. So all you need to know, come back late October. Every night leading up to Halloween night itself, there will be a video. Usually there's a theme to these things, but like I say, we'll announce that later on. So yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know. Brand X Reviews Halloween special. Check back in late October and it will be happening.